On Monday, the City Commission approved the city's participation in a pilot program in partnership with KDHE for a nutrient trading program. What the heck is that? Well, my drawing here of El Dorado Lake will help us explain what a nutrient trading program is and what it will do for the community. So, a nutrient trading program is going to address two primary functions: sedimentation and nutrient reduction. So, as farmers upstream from El Dorado Lake do their business, farming and ranching, invariably they create a situation where nutrients, and particularly phosphorus and nitrogen, are added to the environment, which then enters the watershed and comes down the rivers into El Dorado Lake. Now what happens is these are then pulled out of El Dorado Lake and have to be treated out of the water supply through the water treatment process. And then when the city discharges the water back into the watershed from our water reclamation facility, we also have to remove those nutrients as well. So we have to comply with state and federal regulations with respect to these nutrients, primarily nitrogen and phosphorus. The federal government will change those compliance requirements to more stringent requirements, thus requiring cities to spend more money on technology to ensure that they can come into compliance with those regulations. What this allows us to do is, in essence, incentivize farmers and ranchers to implement best management practices to reduce the amount of chemical runoff that enters the watershed. Another benefit is that El Dorado Lake was designed with a 100-year life cycle. That means that the United States Army Corps of Engineers understood that as water flows down the rivers and creeks that feed into El Dorado Lake, there will be natural soil erosion. This soil then goes down the rivers and eventually ends up in El Dorado Lake. You might notice that when the water level is lower in El Dorado Lake, the north side of the lake looks like you can almost walk across it. All that dirt and mud is actually sedimentation that has flowed into El Dorado Lake from somebody's field or pasture. These best management practices that I've articulated will help farmers reduce the amount of soil erosion that then enters the streams and that eventually flows down to El Dorado Lake. So the goal of that is to actually reduce the amount of sedimentation and by consequence increasing the life cycle of El Dorado Lake. Presently charted at 100 years, properly doing these types of best management practices will hopefully extend the useful life of the lake many years into the future. So we have the benefit of reducing sedimentation and reducing nutrient reduction, which, by the way, will allow us to reduce or defer rather the amount of capital investment needed for the city's treatment plants to comply with federal regulations. So we can basically push out that really expensive investment needed into the future, primarily because of the city's excellent treatment processes and the history that we have there, as well as the implementation of these best management practices. So how does this get paid for? Well, the City Commission approved $50,000 from its water fund budget, and KDHE is going to match that with $50,000 of its Section 319 monies for a total of $100,000. Over the next few years, we'll implement those dollars each year, and then we'll also pursue private dollars, which will then allow us to do even more best management practices in the watershed. Private companies right now are incentivized to invest in best management practices in watersheds for various environmental regulations that they too have to come into compliance with. So this will hopefully be a win-win-win for a number of parties: citizens of El Dorado, private companies that have to comply with various environmental regulations or requirements that they have, and El Dorado Lake as we extend the useful life of the lake. So it's a complicated process, it's a complicated project, but at the end of the day, the benefits to the city of El Dorado and its citizens are enormous. And the state is hoping that they can use our pilot, because we'll be the first one in the state to do this, as an example for other communities to do the same thing. So we're going to be doing great things for the community, as well as setting an example that hopefully the rest of the state can follow. This is a great program, and I'm really excited to be able to share it with you because of its implications for our community and for the rest of the state. That's all I got for Things to Know. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.